And so I do not see hybrid opportunities going away. If anything, I think we're going to see an increase.
Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the Easy EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast. Or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the Easy EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by my Amazon storefront. I've pulled together more than a dozen lists of my favorite gifts, books, and spring cleaning items for educators. My collections on Amazon make it easy to find all of my books written by Easy EdTech Podcast guests, and so much more. Use the link classtechtips.com/Amazon to go straight to my Amazon storefront. That's classtechtips.com/Amazon. Today's episode is how to plan a successful hybrid conference for educators with Dr. Stephanie Williams. Now, a few years ago, I had the incredible experience of presenting at a hybrid conference hosted by Dr. Williams in Greenville, South Carolina. Greenville, a fantastic city. My parents live in South Carolina, so I get down there a good amount. Greenville, I love. I've had a chance to visit a few times. I've spoke at their conference a couple years, and I got a firsthand look at how she runs both the live in-person sessions and the virtual components too. So I recently reached out to Stephanie and invited her onto the podcast so that she could share some of her insights that are really unique. Having a hybrid conference, you don't see this all the time. So today, she pulls back the curtain on the process of planning and facilitating a hybrid event. So whether you've attended one, are curious about how the behind the scenes of a conference works, or you're just thinking about starting your own event and maybe hybrid is something you want to bring into the equation, well, Stephanie has tons of great strategies for you. Let's go ahead and dive into the conversation. Welcome to the podcast today. I am just so excited to talk about how to plan a successful hybrid conference for educators. But before we get into all of that, can you share with listeners a little bit, what is your role in education? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad to be here with you, Monica. My name is Dr. Stephanie Williams, and I am the Director of Instructional Technology with Greenville County Schools in Greenville, South Carolina. And my day-to-day typically consists of connecting with schools leadership to anything that I can do to support their staff, working with my team and supporting them as they are supporting their schools, and kind of mitigate any type of obstacles that might be present and how we can find best possible solutions. I also work with various vendors with either their existing product within the district or looking at possible technology solutions that we can bring into the district. I'm also responsible for refreshing our teachers' laptops. So that is a huge chunk of my time in the fall, which is like, oh yeah, I also do that. I'm making sure that our teachers have the tools that they need for their day-to-day to make sure that they're providing the best possible learning experiences for their students. So that is particularly my day-to-day, and just various committee meetings that I need to attend. which we all have those meetings. So, but yeah, that's my day to day.
Well, lots of different things that you are a part of, right, over the course of the school year in your learning environment. I've had the chance to come down and do some work in Greenville at your conference. Very excited to chat about this topic today because, it's one that's come up a few times when I've talked to educators about things that they're planning for their school, for their district, for their region. They are finding that people are more willing perhaps to come to something virtual instead of saying no way, no more webinars, right? So like they're looking for some options. Maybe it's the summertime, maybe it's a school break, maybe it's the weekend, right? They want some options. And so as we talk about hybrid conference today, can you share a bit about the events you've hosted in the past that would, fall under this category?
Absolutely. So every year we host a free technology conference for educators across the state of South Carolina and surrounding states. And we have been putting on this conference since 2007. So this is really a it's just a wow factor for me. Like, oh my gosh, this has been going on for since 2007. I came into the department in 2013. So to be a part of this event, I remember attending this event as a teacher, as a classroom teacher, and now to actually be behind the scenes and put on this event has just been just a wonderful experience. It's a lot of work because our focus is to make sure that the attendees are having a great experience from the time they hit the parking lot throughout the day and back to the parking lot. So, with the onset of COVID in 2020, we were in the thralls of planning our in person 2020 conference, and we had to quickly pivot. And like, we don't want to just throw it all away because these are just great presenters, and we still want to give them the opportunity to present. And not only that, we are all at home, and how can we quickly take this in-person experience and make it virtual and still make it a wonderful, meaningful experience for the attendees? So we quickly pivot. Now, at that particular time, we had over about 200 sessions that we had to scale back heavily. And what we end up doing is making it not only just a virtual conference, but we also those who we couldn't fit into the 2 days, we actually expanded the conference to 3 days. And then we also added a nightly session. So those who were attending to their children and helping and supporting them for childcare, then we quickly was able to give them a session that was at night. So that was just a nice way to kind of capture that segment of educators who would have not normally been able to participate throughout the day for various reasons. And so from 2020, we knew that as we were making our way back to brick and mortar, that attendees would not have been ready to be in person in 21. So we hosted another virtual conference in 21 as well. This time, since we were back in brick and mortar, we did not host a nightly session, but we still was able to provide the attendees the experience over those 2 days. So we scaled it back from 3 days back to our typical 2 days. In 23, we were able to bring it back in person.
Mhm.
But we also like, golly, we still had a lot of attendees for virtual. And so how do we continue to capture that population that's still unable for various reasons attend in person? So that was our first hybrid conference was in 2023. And so we kind of took the team and kind of not necessarily took a third of the team, then their sole focus was on the virtual component. And then the 2/3 of the team focused on the in-person. And so that is kind of the history of UTC being just a free EdTech conference. And that's another thing, it was free. We know that schools and their budgets are unable to send their teachers for a conference experience. And therefore, to be able to offer the conference free for our educators, we were just really excited about that. But also just connecting with other districts and they sending in their team members to not only present, but also to attend as well. It gave teachers an opportunity, not only teachers, but teachers, administrators, instructional coaches opportunities to build their professional learning network. So that's the history of UTC.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting as you share because, right, sometimes things happen that are out of our control, right? Like going into, a COVID experience, right? Like that made the decision for you, right? But then you could have just, tossed that aside and gone back to being right completely in person. So as you're, now reflecting on what's happened in the past and, what it means to plan, right, for something like this, how do you decide which parts of the event would be live versus online? What are some of the biggest logistical challenges in planning for attendees that are tuning in different ways?
So for that first year of our hybrid conference, we actually had two separate registrations. Whether you're going to be virtual, you're just going to be all virtual. And then if you were going to be hybrid, you were going to be, in person, you're going to be all in person. That was just for managing wise. We were trying to avoid just some of the hiccups of folks going in between the two. And so because we are a small staff, it was just a lot easier to say, okay, if you're going to register for virtual, you're just going to be virtual. And then if you're going to register for in person, that way, when it came to, teachers, because of their time and since they are wanting to come, but they also do want to receive those credits for their attendance.
Mhm.
And so it just allowed us to be able to make sure that we provided teachers the correct credits and so they can receive their credits for attendance. With that, we made sure that those who were supporting our virtual component, we made sure that their logos and their names were being captured. Some of them did like little mini commercials for us. So we was able to kind of play those commercials in between sessions or right at the beginning of a virtual session, just to make sure that their brand was getting out in front of the attendees for their virtual experience. And then we had our vendors or partners that was focusing primarily on the in-person. And so that's how we attempted it that first year, is making sure that, okay, if they're going to be virtual, they're going to be all virtual. There's not going to be this going back and forth.
Mhm.
And then if they're going to be in person, they're going to be in person. It's just for management wise, it made it a lot easier for us to kind of focus on those two separately,
Mhm.
even though they were both being housed in the same location. So we had presenters who also presented in person as well as virtually that
Mhm.
first year. So we set up a space at the high school where there was nothing going on in that hallway.
Mhm.
We kind of had them isolated so that there would not be any kind of background distractions. And those presenters who, when they filled out their proposal, one of the questions asked if you would be comfortable presenting both in person and virtually.
Yeah.
Or maybe do you just want to do virtually only? So even the presenters had the opportunity to say, oh, I can do both. And so we just could not have the virtual component in a different location. It had to be in the same location in order for us to assist those presenters who decided to not only present in person, because it is a different feel when you're presenting in person versus presenting online. Now that I've done online for a few years, I love the online. Like, just turn your cameras on,
Right.
and I can still read the room with your cameras on, and it's still going to be an interactive opportunity for you. It's not going to be a sit and get. And I think that's a lot of those who confuse webinars or virtual conferences is a sit and get, and you're just watching someone talk at you for 45, 50 minutes. But we also made sure that we selected individuals, particularly from the previous 2 years, who just captured the essence of what it means to be a virtual presenter and how to get the audience engaged and the content and getting them the opportunities to actually create or engage in conversations.
It's so interesting because I was thinking back before we chatted today, about my experience presenting at the conference. And I was there one of those years where I went down that hallway and I sat in one of the rooms, right? And it was so fun because, as someone who's used to doing a lot of virtual and plenty of in person, I don't think I've ever done a virtual on site like that before. And you have such a well organized event. And so anyone who follows the Instagram feed that you have, right, knows how much, right, planning and stuff goes into everything. But it was really a unique experience to kind of move away from the hustle and bustle, of the conference, and then to go into this quiet space, connect with people who are at home, right, or wherever they might be tuning in, and then kind of jump back in. So, from that behind the scenes, lens, it was really fascinating just to feel the energy both virtually with those participants and the energy, physically, right, being in the space. So, you mentioned, right, the I guess video conferencing component, right, or the webinar component. So for someone who's thinking about maybe bringing this into their own region, what tools or platforms helped you make that hybrid experience run smoothly?
So we use Zoom, even though we're a Google district and we use Google Meet heavily. We did go with a Zoom at that time, particularly in 2020, because Zoom at that time offered where we were able to open it up, I think, to like 500 users.
Nice.
So we needed a platform that allowed us to have enough space for users. We also needed a platform that would allow us to record the session itself so that if we decided to make those available like an on demand for like 30 days afterwards, then we've been able to do that. And we also needed the analytics component. So
Yeah.
that was very helpful when it provided making sure if someone said, hey, I attended this session, I didn't get my credit. Oh, okay. We were able to use the analytics to like, oh, yeah, you were in that session, but you were only in that session for 5 minutes. So like, no, you're not going to get credit for 5 minutes. So we went with Zoom just because it had the various features that allowed us to also, I think those first 2 years, we kind of embedded some questions. I think as participants came into the room, they saw the poll and were able to respond to that poll. Just kind of, I think it was a couple of just kind of reminders for them for those participants, like, have you make sure you have done X, Y, Z. So Zoom allowed us to host the conference and gave us those various tools to make it very user friendly for, and not so much on our end, but definitely on the user end. So yeah.
And it's interesting too when you think about the user experience. For as much as you might feel right in control behind the scenes, you want people to not only have a good experience when they're present, right, in the sessions, but you want them to come back, right? Or you want them to maybe
Absolutely.
buy into this idea that there's value in providing options for professional learning, particularly during the summertime or when you're encouraging folks from outside of the district or region to come in. So, do you see hybrid events, continuing to play a role in the future of professional development? Do you think that there's, this in-between space for them?
I think there is definitely, I mean, I love like with ISTE. ISTE has their ISTE live component and then the in-person component, which I think it definitely virtual and in-person have its place. Some folks just receive information better when they're in person versus when they're online because there are so many distractions sometimes when you are virtual that email notification pops up across your screen and next thing you know, you're reading that email and trying to respond to the email and you're also in a webinar. So yes, you can do the exact same thing in an in-person conference as well. But I know I'm a little bit more in tune when I am in person. But I also make sure that when I am virtual, I make sure I create the space for myself so I'm not distracted. I close down that email and just so that I can be fully present. Currently, I'm reading Lead from Where You Are by Joe Salapipo. I always pronounce his name incorrectly. And he's talking about just being intentional and being in the moment and being present.
Yeah.
And so I used to have my email open as a presenter. I would have the email open and you're being
Right.
distracted.
Yeah.
Close the email, close the team chat, and let's just fully be present and engage so that you're letting the participants know it's all about you. And I'm here to make
Yes.
sure that I am providing you with information that you can walk away and use the very next day, if not next week.
Right.
And so I do not see I don't see hybrid opportunities going away. If anything, I think we're going to see an increase as we are just in a different headspace now after living through COVID and wanting things. I remember sitting in a session and they talking about, Amazon got us spoiled. Those who are Prime
Right.
members, we want it now.
Yeah.
We want it in 2 days. And so virtual, that hybrid component just allows you to attend anytime, anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I may not catch that first session, but I might be at the beach on vacation and I really saw the schedule and I'm going to catch the 10 o'clock session and then I'm going to catch the 2 o'clock session.
Exactly.
And so I don't have to be right there in person to develop professionally. I can actually be away on vacation. And in fact, I might even absorb even more because I am on vacation and I've already unplugged. And so when you're on vacation and actually make the conscious decision to jump on a PD, you tend to take away a lot more because you have already been unplugged, detached, relaxed, and then now you're ready to absorb. Not only are you ready, but you're willing to absorb information. And so I do not see hybrid opportunities going away. I hope it continues to increase.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I was thinking about just how valuable it is to have that choice as a learner. I think a lot about even myself as a reader. Like if someone suggests a book to me, right, or I come across a book, like I immediately, think to myself, do I want to hold this like in my hand? Do I need the pages to flip back and forth? Is this a good one for an audiobook, right? Do I want to hear the person tell the story of their life? I love a memoir. So, right, like audiobooks are awesome for that, right? Or is it something that I can just plug onto my Kindle, right, and throw in my bag, right, and kind of pick up where, so we have these different modes that we operate in different parts of our lives. And I think the professional learning piece, is there too. So, this has been just so wonderful. I think anyone who's listening, who's been curious about options, both as an organizer and as an attendee, right, has gathered some great ideas and things to consider. So where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about your work and maybe even follow the conference on Instagram, like I mentioned?
So they can connect with me on X at swilliams206. I'm also on Instagram at Dr._Stephanie_Williams. You'd be surprised how many Stephanie Williamses there are out there. But we do have our Instagram account, our department Instagram account, and I want to say it's EdTech GCS.
Perfect. Well, we'll double check and we'll link
I'll definitely,
right? So everyone can follow along. So thank you again so much for your time today and sharing all these great tips with listeners.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate the opportunity.
It was so much fun chatting with Stephanie for today's episode. Let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from the episode. Virtual and hybrid options expand access and meet educators' desire for flexible learning experiences. Presenter flexibility matters too, especially when choosing who can deliver both in person and online. User-friendly platforms with recording and analytics support a smooth virtual experience. Choice in learning mode mirrors how educators consume content in other parts of their lives. Remember, you can find the show notes and the full list of resources from today's episode, including all of the ways to connect with Dr. Stephanie Williams, by heading to easyedtechpodcast.com and finding today's episode, number 355. This episode is sponsored by my Amazon storefront. I've pulled together more than a dozen lists of my favorite gifts, books, and spring cleaning items for educators. My collections on Amazon make it easy to find all of my books written by easy EdTech Podcast guests, and so much more. Use the link classtechtips.com/Amazon to go straight to my Amazon storefront. That's classtechtips.com/Amazon. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.